once you accept, once you accept me, then I can,
Okay,
I will have a record button.
someone's here.
I think that's summer and.
There's.
Good evening
Good
and
evening.
welcome to everyone out in Zoom land. We still have some people arriving.
The railroad was blocking our way.
Oh, you only use that excuse one few times, well.
I should have taken a video.
So glad that you're here. Don't know if you need a print or if you have a name tag.
Still hyphenated, man.
Should not be hyphenated.
No,
We'll fix
this
it.
is the middle name. This is my last name.
Okay, so next meet, I will change it to just Jane Sanders. Yes, we will be sure. Oh, I'm so sorry. No worries.
And still need you to. Okay, me.
Terrific.
Okay, no, I'm recording. And Liz says she's gonna be here?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
This is our meeting that we're doing.
Yeah.
And
This, well, not here.
Okay.
So Liz is here. Actually, might be the one that's gonna be here late at 6:30.
Jim, I sent Louis a picture of your car ahead of me,
No,
behind the train.
She's your witness. She said you were stuck at the train.
yeah, I actually called, and left a message on the phone.
A day or two, they'll get it.
I think once Melissa gets back, we'll get started.
Right.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome. Haven't seen you in person in a long time.
It's been a while.
Welcome.
How are you?
Good, how are you? There you go. Good job.
Right. Yeah. Good. So we're just listening. Okay. All right, Melissa, we ready to get started?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And share it.
So we're ready to go. Okay. Okay, good evening, everybody. Tonight I'd like to welcome everybody to the reconvenience of the 7-Eleven committee. We have several new members tonight, so I think we're gonna go ahead and start off with introductions. And then we'll turn it over to Ms. Dunning to, move us into the training for this evening. And if we wanna start with introductions with staff. I'm Louis Freeze, Associate Superintendent for Operations for the district.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Melissa Payne. I'm the Executive Director of Contracts Administration and really excited to support the committee here tonight.
And then we have our legal counsel here tonight to do some training and
Phil Henderson with Orbach, Huff and Henderson to do exactly what Lewis said.
Serena Abraham with Orbach, Huff and Henderson. Thank you for having me. Liz Gray, I'm parent, teacher, resident, and in the business of mortgages and finance.
Summer Fiddler, committee member, also executive director of secondary schools in the district and Richmond.
I'm Tammy Dunning. I am the professional registered parliamentarian. Happy to be here to support you.
My name is Guadalupe Llana, and I am a parent, and a sister, and a community member.
Ardo Rentila, Vice President of West County Wastewater, President of the RNCC, and Fairhaven Hilltop Neighborhood Council.
I'm Don Gosman, just been around forever.
James Sanders, retired teacher, retired peace officer, retired assessor, resident, parent. The end.
well, welcome. And Tammy, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. So we'll use that as our roll call. So welcome to everybody. Let's take a look at the agenda. Everybody got an agenda? I hope you've got an agenda. You've got one in print and you've got one online. So if there are no objections, we will adopt the agenda. Seeing and hearing none, the agenda has been adopted. Yes, sir.
On the agenda, it says that part of the training is gonna be on Robert's Rules of Order. Don't we operate under Rosenberg's rules?
So we're gonna talk about that. I was gonna say, I thought we were gonna. talk
We're
about the differences
gonna
between the
talk
two.
about the differences between the two. We have no rule that says that we operate under Rosenberg or Robert. And during the training, we'll be discussing, we'll talk about the differences, and the training is not specific to either one. It is specific to just debate protocol which they both share. So if for some reason we want to go further than that, we can put it on the next agenda. So, was that an objection to the adoption of the agenda, Don? I just.
No, it's a question.
Okay, so if there are no objections, the agenda will be adopted. Seeing and hearing none, the agenda is adopted, and we'll move right to public comment. In public comment, members of the public are invited to speak on any matter related to the 7-Eleven committee at this time. Members of the public may also speak on individual items of interest in the agenda as we discuss them. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak? Anyone online?
We do not have any hands raised online.
Great, thank you. So we'll move on to our discussion items and we'll go right to the presentation for Robert's Rules of Order. And let's go ahead and address the differences and what a parliamentary authority is to start with. Parliamentary authority are the list of rules for how we conduct business. Has anybody ever used Robert's Rules of Order or Rosenberg when they're in a meeting? Has it been Robert's Rules, Rosenberg, something different, Burgess? Sorry,
Both.
both, great,
Just Roberts.
just Roberts, okay? Anybody else? Have you used it before? Yeah. Roberts, great, or anything. So there are some differences, and Rosenberg and Robert's Rules tend to be your top two. And when I say top two, Robert's Rules of Order is used by up to 95% of boards, okay? It is by far the most popular and the one that you're going to be able to use across multiple boards. Having said that, Rosenberg is used by a little bit less than 15% of boards. So let's talk about the difference. In Rosenberg, primarily the chair is going to decide something. Whereas in Robert's Rules of Order, it is a body that decides something. And so what's the difference there? The chair makes a decision under Robert's Rules. And we can, as the body, challenge it. In Robert, we vote. Rosenberg, we vote also, but there's a lot more Opportunities for the chair to just make a ruling. Okay. With Rosenberg, we have limited amount of motions, where Roberts has 13 basic motions. Rosenberg has no time limits. And I don't know if any of you have been in a 3-hour meeting that should have taken about 30 minutes, just because someone will not stop talking. Roberts has a maximum of 10 minutes per speaker. Rosenberg allows friendly amendments, whereas under Robert's Rules of Order, the amendments are done by the body. Which means once you make a motion and it is seconded, that motion no longer belongs to you, belongs to the body. Under Robert. Under Rosenberg, you retain possession and you can withdraw it at any time before a vote. Okay, Rosenberg has friendly amendments. Robert does not. If you want to amend, we make an actual amendment. Rosenberg has substitute motions. Robert basically does not. Again, Robert calls that just an amendment. Okay, Rosenberg, 3 motions on the floor at once, whereas with Robert, we can have many motions pending and we just go backwards and we kill them up. Okay. With Rosenberg, we have a process of a question, a motion, comments, and then vote. Whereas with Robert's Rules of Order, we have a motion and then we debate and then we vote. Big difference in the length of these. Okay, Rosenberg's about 10 pages long. Robert's Rules of Order is 714 pages. Rosenberg covers very little, where I have almost never run into a problem at a board where if it's not listed in our governing documents, then we can't find it in Robert. In Rosenberg, the chair debates, and in Robert's Rules of Order, the chair is neutral and the chair is there to facilitate. Okay, so debate protocol is, I'm gonna bring it up on mine because even my glasses aren't that strong. This is in your packet, I don't know the page, but it starts off with debate protocol. Page 2. So this is very similar to when you're in a courtroom. Okay? Debate protocol is all about civility. So only one person speaks at a time. And a speaker must be recognized before speaking. Only the chair can recognize a speaker. All comments get made through the chair. And this is a great thing, and it's contained with both. And the reason for that is, James, let's say you and I just passionately disagree on something. The last thing that we need to be doing, maintain civility, is going back and forth between ourselves, because we're gonna raise our voices, we're gonna get kind of ticked off, we're gonna be passionate. Okay, so let's say Guadalupe is the chair. You make a motion to sell 500 chairs. I disagree with it, I hate it. And I cannot say that to you. During discussion, I'm gonna be a con, meaning I'm gonna speak against it, but I have to speak directly to Guadalupe, and I'm gonna say, Guadalupe, I firmly believe that selling 500 chairs when we only have 530 is not a prudent decision. There's no animosity here. We're not arguing. Nobody's mad at the chair. Okay, so that is why we speak to the chair. We do not engage with each other. Comments are confined to the current issue. That means if we're talking about chairs and selling chairs, and that's what our motion is, then we are not going to start talking about tables. We're gonna stick to whatever the current issue is. Okay? Discussion should always alternate between pro and con, meaning the first person to speak gets to be our motion maker. Obviously, they're gonna speak, if Don makes the motion to sell 500 chairs, Don's going to speak to that motion first in support of his motion. And if somebody wants to speak against it, we're gonna go there next, because that would be a con. We should alternate between pro and con. Number 6 is a fun one and also is a struggle. You have no right to complain, you only have the right to make a motion. What does that mean? Let's say you come in and some of you say, you don't like the chairs and they're taking up too much room and they're an ugly color and we should get rid of them. That's great. But at no point, those are all complaints, but at no point did you say, I move that we sell these chairs. So we make an motion and you can use those words to support your motion, but we need to have the motions. Okay. No right to speak a second time unless no one seeks to speak their first time. This helps to ensure that nobody hijacks the meeting. Right? Okay, so hello to everyone who's out there. Let's say, Liz, we're back to talking about these chairs and Dawn says, you know, we should definitely sell the chairs, and Liz, you are totally against selling the chairs. And every time Dawn has a reason, or anybody else on the board has a reason that's supporting the chairs, you want to get recognized and you want to say, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong. Well, let's say someone hasn't had a chance to speak. Okay? And you both are trying to get recognized. Chair's going to recognize someone first because she has not had an opportunity to speak. Once that's exhausted and no one else is seeking to talk, the chair is going to go back to whoever wants to be recognized. Another little interesting tidbit, it's not on the list. The chair has a right to call on whoever they want. Okay? Arturo and Samantha may raise their hands at the same time. Or Samantha, you may raise your hand first. The chair absolutely can call on Arturo first. Okay? We also cannot cede time. We cannot say, no, you can't say, oh, you know what, Samantha was first, call on her. Because that's not.
It's a chair's decision.
So we go with it. No reading papers, that's a filibuster, we don't do that. No cross conversations, no interruptions, including in the chat. We're all here, so we're not using the chat. The no cross conversations is to ensure that we're all talking to the chair, okay? We're all making sure that we all can hear everything. This is really important work that you all are going to be doing. So we need to be paying attention. We need to make sure that we're hearing everything that the speakers or the chair has to say. No verbal attacks to other members. I don't know how to make that more clear. If you do not like someone's idea, vote against it, speak against it. If you do not like somebody, don't invite them over for dinner, okay? You all do not need to like each other and you all do not need to get along. You all represent different types of constituencies, and I guarantee you they do not all agree. We can have great debate without yelling at one another, calling each other's name, calling each other names, or raising our voices. Okay? So we can attack ideas, we do not attack people. Okay, no verbal attacks to other members. If proper decorum cannot be made, we can call a recess. Okay? We can take a breath. When we start talking about Brown Act, there's a couple of things in Brown Act that we can also do. Enforce the debate time limits, whether that we have those time limits in our bylaws, in our parliamentary authority, or on our agendas, okay? As a parliamentarian, we are always going to support having time limits. Okay? Otherwise, we can talk. Let's say the meeting's supposed to go for 2 hours, we can spend 1 hour and 59 minutes on one topic. Okay? All right. Decisions are null and void in the absence of a quorum or proper posting. And the vote to adopt a motion should always be very clear whether it's a majority or 2/3. All decisions are binding on all members regardless of how a member voted. Let me give you an example of that. Don's motion to sell the chairs passes. Liz still hates it, right? But when asked about, if ever asked about the motion to sell the chairs, Liz is going to say, the board voted to sell the chairs, not I don't wanna sell insurance. Okay, once the body makes a decision, the body is bound to it. Okay. All rules should be respected and obeyed, who can move, who can debate, and who can vote. There, for whoever's the chair, there's a little bit of a box down there to help with how to get debate moving along if we're starting to get bogged down. This is very, very brief. Later, because we wanted to spend more time on Brown Act tonight, at a later time, we can talk more about specifically how to make motions, specifically what kind of motions are allowed. But let's do Brown Act and then let's get the rest of our presentations done. So we'll move on to Brown Act. So if you flip the page with me. I am a parliamentarian. I am not an attorney. If we have specifics about specific, we like to go into the weeds. I have noticed with Brown Act, I don't know why, but it happens. But we're gonna do an overview. First and foremost, the public, we love it when public comes to meetings, right? Public never comes to meetings, but we get overexcited and we say, hi, who are you? Where are you from? And the Brown Act is actually really great. Oh, next slide, please. About saying, don't do that. Okay, we cannot force people to give us their name. And if we have a sign-in sheet, it says that signing in is strictly voluntary. And if you look at the sign-in sheet that's over behind us, that the staff has prepared, they did an absolutely perfect job because it says signing in is voluntary. Now that's for all the members of the public. You all are not members of the public. We actually know who's going to be here because we take roll call at every meeting. So we know who you are.
Question.
Yes,
Hi, sorry I'm late, everyone. Why do we request sign-ins if they're voluntary from the public?
that's a great question. There are just a ton of reasons. First, when COVID started, we did it for tracing purposes. Second, some people, we can also use it if we put on there that we're, do you want to be included in the email list? Do you want to be contacted? Do you want to know more? Do you want to serve on a committee? So there are lots of great reasons that people would want to sign in. For us too, it is great to know, hey, did we actually have outside attendance at our meetings? But it is up to the individual member of the public whether or not they actually want to sign in. So, okay, if you look at the very bottom there is a section number 54953.3. I need to memorize a different one of these. Give that out. Please feel free not to believe me. That's a section number in the Brown Act itself. You all have it in front of you. Have the slides in front of you. Feel free to go to the Brown Act and take a look. Next. So the public can also request in writing a copy of the agenda or a copy of all the agenda, all the stuff that goes into the agenda packet. What you have in front of you is the actual agenda packet. The agenda packet has everything that we're going to look at in a meeting. Public has a right to ask for that. 99.9% of the time in today's day and age, we send an electronic link, right? Yes, we do. However, there are still some people that have no internet. Okay? They have no way of getting something electronically. They ask us to mail it to them. And do we have to do that? Yes, we have to do that. We are allowed to charge a fee. We may only charge a fee for the cost of the copies and the cost of the mailing. That's it. Okay. Next, if you have any questions, please interrupt me as I go. Don't wait until the end. So posting. This is one of those areas a lot of clients tend to get tripped up on. The Brown Act is very clear that at least 72 hours before a regular meeting, the board will post an agenda. The agenda is going to contain a brief general description. Brown Act even says, you need about 20 words. Great. A brief general description of each item of business to be transacted at the meeting, including items for the closed session. What the heck does that mean? It means if we do not put it on the agenda, We are not gonna take action on it. We are not going to discuss it. It's very basic. If we do not post it, we do not talk about it. Not just, there seems to be, we get some pushback here. Well, we don't have to talk, we don't have to make a decision. We can still talk about it. No, we actually can't. We don't discuss it. We don't talk about it. There are 3 exceptions to this rule. Next one, the very first one, and the one that will probably most often, if it ever comes up, apply to us, is if we determine by a 2/3 vote, unanimous of less than 2/3 of you are here, that there's a need to take an immediate action, and the need of the action came to our attention after the posting of the agenda. Okay, what the heck does that mean? Is it timely? Do we have to take immediate action? Meaning, can it wait until, can this item wait until our next meeting? Or do we have enough time to have a special meeting? We'll talk about special meetings in a minute. Did we have prior knowledge of this item? Okay, who knew and when? So there's something interesting here. As board members, this applies to you. Does not apply to staff, does not apply to your attorneys, does not apply to your parliamentarian. Why is that? We are all considered members of the public. Members of the board are those of you with a vote. Other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, other than you 7, nobody on this table has a vote. They're all, the rest of us are members of the public. Okay. Next slide, please. Yes, sir.
Many of us that attend a lot of our local meetings, we see very frequently that, like, let's say, city councils in particular will decide to have an emergency meeting. Okay, and just the question is, do we need to take immediate action? Well, the people calling the emergency meeting are the ones deciding whether it's an emergency or not. And sometimes it's sure, you have a question, why are we talking about something that's gonna happen in several months from now? And you've decided it's an emergency because especially with most meetings that are emergency, they're not held on the regular date and time of a city council meeting or a school board meeting. And so if the public has no reason to go online to look, I don't wake up every morning and say, what did they sneak into the webpage today?
Right.
And they do, but
And-
I don't do that, but bottom line is, it's the perception of the public is, it's a way for that elected body or the government body to sneak something by. And especially when they decide to hold that meeting, not during the evening hours, but during the workday when most people that actually, I understand that there are a few people that actually have day jobs. I think you guys have day jobs, but, because they're not gonna be able to make these secret meetings.
So, and we see that, we do, and that's a very, very good point, Don. Brown Act actually has a definition for an emergency meeting. We were gonna get that, but let's do it now, yes?
You will almost certainly never have an emergency meeting.
Exactly, unless the building is on
7-Eleven
fire.
Advisory committee
No,
meeting.
you know, we
The
will.
opportunity for you to have an emergency would have to be a catastrophe. So-
Yeah,
But, right,
but you're talking about when it's referred, we do see some boards where they're gonna say, we have to have an emergency meeting. What they're actually talking about is we have to have a special meeting. Okay, fine, and we can have special meetings as long as we post 24 hours in advance. An emergency meeting is not fitting that description. Here's the thing. We see these errors happen. If you don't call them out, they're gonna keep happening. And it could very well be that board does not actually know that what they're doing is against Brown Act.
many of us attend a lot of different meetings, so we're getting a Brown Act training here. I wanna make sure that the Brown Act training we get right here, that we don't misuse it or misunderstand it when we go to, like I said, we're going to the city council meeting, when we're done here tonight.
Brown Act does not change whether you're having a 7-Eleven committee meeting or a city council meeting. What changes is whether it's followed or not. And we can talk about what do we do if we notice Brown Act is not being followed, and we'll get there. Hold that thought for me. Okay. Next slide. So here are the second and third exemptions. And they're great, but So the second one is the item was posted for a prior meeting that occurred not more than 5 days beforehand. And the prior meeting was continued to the current meeting. Okay, that's a mouthful. What the heck does that mean? It means that we know we have to finish something. We could not get to it. We say, okay, we're gonna continue this meeting until, and we're gonna have a meeting within 5 days. So that gets really messy. The other one, just like Don was just saying, is upon a determination by majority vote that an emergency situation exists. And in bold, you'll notice there, forgetting to post the agenda on time is not an emergency. It's a mistake. And we have things that we can do to get us around the mistake, but it certainly doesn't qualify as an emergency. Forgetting to put something on the agenda is not an emergency. Whether or not we can add that to the agenda is going to depend on those three conditions we talked about just a couple of minutes ago. Okay, let's talk about having the public come in. Because, ooh, they're here, we've had them, they did decide to sign in the sign-in sheet and they want to address us. So next slide, whenever you get a chance. Every agenda has an opportunity for the public to address the board. We have public comment right at the beginning, and during that time, the public can talk to us about anything that's under our subject matter jurisdiction. Public cannot come in and talk to us and take our time and say, you know what? I don't know if you saw Law and Order last night, but it was a great one. Because our committee has nothing to do with Law and Order. It'd be great if it did, but it just doesn't, okay? Now, if the public wanted to come into us and in public comment, wanted to say, you know what? There are 500 chairs sitting over at my son's school. They're ugly as sin. Can you guys get rid of them? Can you do something with them? Can you at least move them? That would certainly be under our subject matter jurisdiction. Here's the problem. If it is not on the agenda, we cannot start discussing it. What can we do? We can briefly respond to the public, okay? What usually happens is the chair is gonna do the responding, and the chair is gonna say, if they know information, let's say they know, actually those chairs are getting moved tomorrow, thank you for bringing it to our attention. Or the chair is gonna say, we're gonna look into it, or the chair can say something like, we'll put it on the next agenda item. What we cannot do is now take it as a board and start discussing and vote on what are we gonna do with these chairs. Okay, there's a real interesting thing that says a public does not need to be afforded an opportunity to speak on topics already discussed openly at a committee meeting where the public had an opportunity to speak. There's some exceptions to this. One, if there is any change to how it came out of committee and then it comes to the board, then yes, public has a right to speak. Let me just say this for every meeting I've ever been to, for anyone that's ever tried to enforce that rule or had issues with the public. The very first time you tell the public that they cannot speak, they are going to flip out. It is not worth it. It is not worth it. Okay? The public has no obligation to know Robert's Rules of Order, Rosenberg, or Brown Act. Okay? And 99% of the time when someone in the public actually shows up to the meeting, they're just mad. And all they want to do is be heard. Okay? We should never, under any circumstance, try and give the impression that we are not going to hear the public. We can do wonderful things on our agendas. We can limit the time that people can speak. We can limit the amount of time we spend on a topic, okay? But we never want to tell the public, you may not speak and we are silencing you. Okay, let's talk about agendas, because we're still with the posting. Where do we have to post them? So the agendas have to have some information on them. Has to specify the time and location of our regular meeting, and it needs to be posted in a location that is freely accessible to members of the public and has to be posted on our website if we have one. Do we have a website? Trick question, we actually do, and if you look at the West Contra Costa School Board website, they actually have a website for all of the committees. And it includes 7-Eleven, it includes CBOC, it includes some that when I looked have not met in years and years and years, prioritization committee, charter subcommittee. So, but we do have a website. So we post our agendas for in-person, we post them online. That keyword, if we hit the next one, the next slide, and. Brown Act doesn't say do one or the other, Brown Act says and or two different things, as I'm sure your attorneys will tell you. If we post one and forget the other, we did not properly post. Okay. Again, it's a mistake, it's an accident, can we fix it? We could still have a meeting, but we have to use different circumstances. We wind up having a special meeting that would not fall in our regular meeting time. Okay, next one. And the next one after that. Okay, time limits, we were talking about that. The Brown Act says that we can adopt regulations to limit the total amount of time allocated for a particular issue and for each speaker as included on the posted agenda. This is part of like what we talked about when the public comes to talk to you, the last thing we want to do is tell them, you know what, we're done hearing from you. We want to be able to point to our agenda and say, we notified the public, and the board, that this is the amount of time that we're going to spend on each item. This is the amount of time that each person is going to get to talk on the item. When we put a time limit, we're not saying that, James, if the time limit is 3 minutes per speaker, we're not saying you only get 3 minutes to talk the entire meeting. We're saying on that topic, everyone gets 3 minutes. All right, next.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely, interrupt me all the time.
Sorry.
No, I appreciate the it's better to get questions while we're going through it.
At some more productive meetings that I've been to, where we had an open agenda, and that not Robert's rules necessarily,
Right.
but we only had so much time, so we allocated the time available to the topics. And came to an agreement, a consensus as to how much time, and then that time limit was enforced by the group.
Yes,
So without how can I say this? How do we set a time limit with respect to the agenda? Either at the beginning of the meeting or prior to the meeting, so that we don't run into these meetings that go on to forever.
great question. And the way we do that is we post on the agenda how much time that we're going to have. So if we look at our agenda, I'm gonna go way back here. And we look and we see, we start with the welcome and introduction, approval of agenda. Behind each of those, we could put 2 minutes. That's the amount of time that we're gonna spend on that. Public comment. We would need to include in that public comment that comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, 10 minutes per topic. Okay. Then we turn the page and we look at discussion items. Now, sometimes you will see discussion items and you'll see right behind that, you'll see 20 minutes. And the assumption there is, hey, it's 10 minutes per topic. Well, that's not what it says. It says 10 minutes for the entire item, meaning we could spend 9 minutes on D1 and 1 minute on D2. So we always recommend we put the time limit at the end of D1. So D1, we knew that I would be talking for up to 60 minutes. Okay, taking the first part of the meeting. And then the next one would be 60 minutes. So instead of putting a time limit on the section, we put a time limit on each individual item. Let's say we have something on here, a presentation about chairs. Okay, Don knows it's 10 minutes. So we're gonna put 10 minutes. And again, action items, we're gonna put how long under each action item that's going to be needed. And when we adopt the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, we have adopted everything on the agenda, including those time limits.
Okay.
One of the reasons we use parliamentary procedure, I saw you, Don, I'll be right back, is that there is a process and a vote threshold to change those. And under Roberts, and under most parliamentary authorities, it is 2/3. If you want to extend time on something, we need a 2/3 majority. And the reason for that is we are affecting someone's right to speak, because sometimes we can say, under both, we can call a question, meaning we want to end debate. That's taking away someone's right to speak, right? So 2/3 of us have to agree to do it. So those are, when we talk about vote thresholds, that's it. Don, you had something for us?
Yeah, we've all attended plenty of meetings and some with time constraints on the agenda and some of them without. And I know a lot of people think that, one of the most important parts about this meeting is we gotta be out of here by 8 o'clock. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that we need to take care of the business at hand. And what you can end up with is when you put time limits on the agenda itself, is that, Don, I know since our previous discussions that you have the cure for cancer, you've got the solution to peace in the Middle East, and you know how to solve the district's budget crisis, but we're out of time, so you can't talk. And that's the feeling I walk away from at that meeting is I was shut up again.
And that's a frustrating as heck feeling, been there, really have on both sides of that. So let's pick one of those. Let's say, so, what did you say?
Oh, well,
No, pick one, no, seriously, let me give the example, so
let's do the easy one. We're gonna solve the budget crisis in the district.
we're gonna solve the budget crisis on the district, fantastic, okay. Let's hope that can happen, okay. So, Don is on the agenda to solve the budget crisis, and is a time limit of 20 minutes. We get to 20 minutes. Don has more to say. What do we do? Now, there's a couple of things here, and Don, let me thank you in advance for volunteering as tribute. Okay. There are some members of the board that just feel Don has talked enough, right? No new information, and they are just done with this topic. Ready to vote, ready to implement your plan, because I'm gonna make the assumption that you came in with a plan to balance the budget, and you made a motion at the very start on what to do. So we already have our motion. Now we're just talking about it. Okay, we're done hearing it. We run out of time, we're going straight to a vote. Now, let's say we get to that 20-minute mark. Summer, you are loving everything Don has to say. You want to know more. You are absolutely enthralled. There's more information here. You are going to make a motion to say, I move to extend the time on this item by, and you're gonna give us one or two things. One, a time, a literal time by 20 minutes, giving Don an extra 20 minutes to talk. Or you're gonna say, until this presentation is over. A little scary, please don't ever use that one, but it is a possibility. And then we're all gonna vote on it. And if 2/3 of us say, yes, let's keep going, you get to keep going. So absolutely, I do understand the frustration. But let us remember, we are a board majority rules, right? No one gets hijacked a meeting. If you need more time, you can actually make the motion. Don't be afraid to do that. Yes, Arturo, you.
Since we were talking about posting the agenda, what is the policy here for somebody viewing or a board member coming to a meeting remotely? Do they need to post the agenda outside their door and allow anybody in?
Give me a moment, we're gonna get there.
So you talk, you
We're
said
gonna talk
board
about
member, are you talking about committee member or school board
Committee
member?
members, sorry.
committee member. Give me a moment, we're gonna get there. Okay, public speaking prohibitions. We cannot tell people they are not allowed to criticize our policies, procedures, programs, services, or omissions. What does that mean? The public can criticize what action we take and what action we do not take. What the public cannot do is personally attack you. And I miss Anton so much at this moment. So I'm gonna go back to you, Don. I'm a member of the public. I come to the meeting and I say, Don, I really, really disagree with you voting on the motion, voting to sell 500 chairs when we only have 530. Am I allowed to do that? Absolutely. It's a vote that Don took. I'm a member of the public and I come in and I say, you know what, Don? This professional meeting, what the heck are you doing wearing sandals? You don't have that right. You look ridiculous. That's disrespectful. Do I have the right to do that? I do not.
Let's step outside and
Personal.
talk about that.
That's right. I can take you. You're a Marine, right? That's Army. Army wins every time. That's a personal attack against Don. Don, I like your sandals, by the way. That's why I went with the sandals. That's a personal attack.
But you can't stifle the First Amendment.
The First Amendment gives you the right to speak. Absolutely. First Amendment does not give anyone the right to come into this meeting and attack Don. Doesn't.
No.
The
but
Brown Act protects Don from a personal attack. If a member wants to come in, if a member of the public wants to come in and exercise their right to speak and criticize every single vote that Don has ever given, feel free. They have the right to do that, provided that they are keeping within the time frame that we established. Yes,
Correct.
but not a personal attack. Brown Act protects it.
Really? Council?
You have the right to say that about the sandals all you want. Not in a Brown Act meeting for public school district in California. There's requirements run under rules. The First Amendment doesn't allow you to what? You know the example, right?
Yep.
Scream fire in a theater,
There
right?
you go.
What is the point of talking about his sandals at this meeting, besides being offensive and disrupting a public meeting? So,
And we're gonna talk about in a second how we handle that.
Mhm.
Did you have another question? I think someone else had a question. I don't wanna.
No.
No?
You
We're
just
good?
answered it.
Just answered it. All right, moving on. I'm gonna move a little bit more quickly so I get to what you were talking about. Special meetings, what do we put on the agenda and when can we hold one? We can hold a special meeting anytime outside of our regular meeting time. Do we have a regular meeting time? We don't right yet, but we will by the end of this meeting. What do we put on the agenda? We only put on the agenda what we need to deal with that cannot wait for a special meeting. We wouldn't put on minutes. We wouldn't put on reports. And I want to clarify that with minutes. If we're having a special meeting because we need to approve minutes, we can do that. But otherwise, let's say we're having a fire sale of those chairs and Don gets an awesome offer and we need to approve it. And the buyer is saying, hey, I need these by Thursday. This is Tuesday. We're gonna call a special meeting so we get that best price, okay? But that would be the only thing we would talk about on the agenda. Secret ballots, next one. Under the Brown Act, no action can be decided by a secret ballot. Every member's vote must indicate if they were for something, if they were against something, or if they abstained on their vote, okay? That has to be in our minutes. We can use a ballot when we want to vote for something. We may not make it secret. Well, how does that work? We're actually gonna have an election, not very far from now, and we could use a ballot if we wanted. Our name would go on the ballot. Person we're voting for would go on the ballot in the position. Those ballots get collected, they all go into the minutes. Okay, let's keep going. We're gonna talk about teleconferencing now, which is what you were talking about. Board may use teleconference for the benefit of the public in connection with any law proceeding authorized by law. Okay, what the heck does that mean? Whoops. There we go. When we're on a teleconference, all votes should be taken by roll call, and I thought this was so weird. Why do we have to have roll call? Well, I figured this out. I didn't figure it out myself. I wasn't quite that smart. I worked for a couple of attorneys as a paralegal, and we were having lunch with a district attorney one time, and I brought this up. But why the heck do we have to have roll call? You know how much that slows a meeting down to have roll call, especially with bigger boards? Interminable. Here's why. Let me give you an example. I keep using Don, I'm sorry. Samantha, Guadalupe, and Arturo, Arto waited until now, all of this time.
It's on the sign.
Arto, my glasses
We're just
aren't
making
that good.
faces about it every time you.
Thank you.
It's fine.
All right. We are all on the committee together and I am the chair. And we're gonna have a teleconference because we have to vote on a few things and one of them is, selling these shares. Samantha, you just can't make the meeting. Arto, you wanna go out to dinner, and Guadalupe, you just don't wanna be there at all. And I said, listen, just call in. Let's get the roll call done. Then take off. And then at every single item, I'm gonna say, if there are no objections, we're going to sell these 500 chairs. Well, there won't be any objection. How could there be? You're not there. And they pointed out, it in taken by roll call, we can prove, we still have quorum. And we meet the other requirement for Brown Act by recording every single person's vote. Okay, yes.
We had an incident in the Richmond City Council during the pandemic where one of the members said, well, his camera's not working. So all we saw was his name on there. We saw that, and saw that. And then somebody noticed he actually had left his home, went to the El Cerrito City Council and made a presentation on TV.
No.
Okay, and tried to still say he was at the Richmond City Council in person, via Zoom.
No,
Yeah, absolutely. They're not smart about some of these things.
all right.
I mean, that's another reason why you don't do that kind of things. Too many chances for abuse.
Exactly, too many chances for abuse. Okay, so let's say there was some confusion with this meeting and I'm really gonna work on wrapping up here. Can we call in from home? Absolutely. Brown Act provides it. What do we have to do to get that? Well, every site would be a teleconference site. So I'm gonna keep using your name, so I get it right now. Arto, it shouldn't be two syllables, should it? Arto wants a teleconference from home. In order to do that, when we post the agenda 72 hours in advance, we also need to include your location. We do not have to say, hey, folks, this is Arto's house, go to his place. Your location also has to be ADA compliant. What does that mean? It means someone's gonna be able to get to the meeting. If they're in a wheelchair and you've got steps, that's not ADA compliant. Do we have a workaround for that? Yes, because your address includes your driveway and most driveways don't have any steps. Is anyone actually going to show up at your house? Not bloody likely, okay? So, post your address. No, you have to post the, agenda also at your address, okay? If that's what you wanna do, fine. It can, during the pandemic, we were able to just do that, and then we had the rules change in the Brown Act that said, okay, now we're not doing that, and you have to have, there were special circumstances where you could do it at the last minute. We don't have that anymore. So you could not decide at 4 o'clock today you were gonna stay home. I mean, you could, and you'd call into the meeting, but you're not voting and you're not counted as part of our quorum. There's only 7 of us, folks, we need to count, we all count. So, when the agenda gets posted 72 hours in advance, make sure you're letting staff know that you wanna be home and you're giving them your teleconference location.
Yeah, and there's some bodies that allow you to vote as long as you're visually on screen. And then there's some bodies that don't allow you to vote remotely.
Why would they not allow you to vote remotely?
Because you're not in the presence of the rest of the board or rest of the committee or whatever it is.
So maybe shoot them a copy of the Brown Act.
Yeah.
Or somebody else is voting in their stead.
Yeah.
So I'm not even gonna touch that.
Also, aren't there a limitation on how many times this can happen per
Not
year?
anymore.
Okay, thank you.
That was the just cause and all of that, and that expires. When did that expire? December? of January.
I think it's still in place.
Is it still in place? I'll get back to you if it's still in place, and then it's 2 or 3 times a year. And not that big of a problem, so. Meeting remotely does not have to be. For some reason, we make it to be harder than it really is. Post your address on the agenda. Okay? Make sure you have an ADA compliant area at that address where you can meet. That's the long and short of it. Okay, there is a little bit more on this. However, we do need to get to the rest of the agenda. I do want to say one thing to be careful with is email. Email reply all is absolutely not your friend. Please do not talk about the committee's business in email and then hit reply all. Do we have a workaround around that? If you want to get one-way information, send it out in an email, put everybody on it. BCC everybody, so that if somebody mistakenly hits reply all and starts discussing it, they're only going to get the message sender. Okay, so we're not including everybody.
Can I piggyback on that, Jamie?
Absolutely.
I would highly recommend that you refrain from sending emails to one another, even BCCs. We represent public entities for a living. The amount of times that I have to cure that against all the other Brown Act violations, probably tenfold. So,
Really?
yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Because one person talks to one person who talks to the next person, and somebody asks a question, and somebody starts answering the question.
Yep.
All of a sudden, you're dealing with the committee's business via email.
So,
Yeah.
There's nothing you guys should be talking about in email that you shouldn't be talking about right here, right now.
So since you're not providing devices, are devices subject to Brown or public records request or personal devices?
Yes, they are. Actually, keep going forward. There was a really interesting case. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Stop right there. They went before the California Supreme Court, and I followed this. I love this case. It's the city of San Jose versus Ted Smith, if you want to look at it. And the question that came up was the difference between personal, your personal cell phone versus government cell phone, particularly email, okay? Because you have a government email, in this case, City of San Jose members, had government emails, but they were also using the personal emails to talk about board business, the next one. And the question that arose, the issue that came before the court was, are writings concerning the conduct of public business beyond a CPRA's reach merely because they were sent or received using a non-government account? And the court unanimously said no. Writings about public business are not excluded from a CPRA. For those of you who don't know what a CPRA is a California Public Records Act request, simply because they've been sent, received, or stored in a personal account. So, no, your text, your cell phone, your Facebook messages, your social medias, no, they're all subject to a CPRA account regarding the business of the board. Yes.
just to expand on this a little bit, I get inquiries about this committee and what we're doing with respect to specific properties.
I love this question.
If I say word one in writing by any device to any member of the public, that device is searchable, is that correct?
So you got an interesting question there, and that's gonna be up to a judge, and I'm not one. A lawyer's gonna be better advise you, but you said a magic word there, member of the public. Okay, please feel free to talk about the board business with the members of the public as much as you can. Certainly for transparency's sake, you want the world to know, at least in the district, what the board is doing. Please do not communicate with anyone else that has a vote using any device whatsoever, unless you're here.
I'll piggyback on that.
I was.
If you're communicating with a member of the public, they'll know you as a member of the 7-Eleven committee. Are you speaking for the 7-Eleven committee? Are you speaking for Jim? That,
Right.
I'll answer your question for you. The first sentence should be, I'm speaking on
The board
my
has
personal-
decided,
Yeah.
or the committee has decided, period. Rather than, I think.
right.
As soon as I say, I think, we have a problem. Is that correct?
Well, not necessarily, a problem. You are free to have that opinion, but you can't be seen as speaking for the committee unless the committee one has made that decision and you're simply communicating it. I would still hesitate doing that because that should be something the committee would put together as a group to communicate out to the public. But if you're speaking as your individual, the first line of your response back or whatever you're writing should be, I'm speaking only on my own behalf. My second suggestion would be that should be the last line, or whatever it is you're saying. And as a reminder, I'm speaking only on, my personal belief or my personal opinion. And again, unless you were charged as the person speaking on behalf of this committee on some decision that could be made.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify that under the public records request, they cannot, unless they have a warrant issued by a judge, they cannot take your devices from you. And the information that they're asking for is on the honor system.
I'll make 2 points. Tell me if I got any of this wrong. They would have to subpoena your phone.
Correct.
Again, for a 7-Eleven committee, I have no idea why anybody would subpoena your phone. You're an
Right,
advisory
exactly
committee.
my
You're not making
point.
decisions, you're making recommendations. Number 2, they would arguably have permission, and I'm using that word advisedly, to say, I want to see that text or that particular email. We understand you send an email regarding X, Y, and Z to so and so, whatever it is. They don't necessarily get to see your phone. You have to share that. As a member, you are part of a Brown Act committee for the board.
Correct.
So your communications, as Tammy pointed out, whether or not it's on your personal phone or a phone maybe, or a computer that the district gives you, I don't think you're giving committee members phones or
Yeah,
computers.
and our information is not going through a server.
Exactly. It would be, for lack of a better term, I'll say honor system, but you would have to, you'd be under a direction to disclose that.
Right.
But again, whether or not it's on a personal phone or a district device, doesn't really make a difference. It's whether or not the communication itself was a violation of Brown Act, that text, that email, that Instagram post, that if anyone's still on Facebook, whatever, all that stuff.
Or that like on Facebook.
Hopefully a like would, anyway, yeah.
So correct me if I'm misunderstanding this too, that any correspondence that we have to do with the 7-Eleven committee, we can't delete it.
I mean, you can't delete it.
Well, because then if it's a public records request, we can't provide it. If we
Well,
delete
there
it,
are timelines, though. I mean, you're implying that you gotta keep it forever and ever until you die.
well,
maybe
I'm
not
not
that.
implying, I'm not implying that, but at least while we're conducting our business.
Okay.
I mean, if Jim and I are going back and forth on an issue and we decide to delete it, and somebody else heard about this secret negotiations we were having, and as a public records request, they say, there's nothing here. And we've deleted it. And is it, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Hillary run into a little bit of a problem with this?
It didn't-
With 35,000 deleted emails?
Boy, I'm not touching that with a 10.
I'm not either.
Yeah,
We are getting, and forgive me.
Yeah,
that is
I don't
good-
have an answer for
business
that because you're
protection.
asking, can I purposely delete something that might be a public record? Longer discussion for a different night. We're not
Yes.
gonna go down that road tonight.
But you're recommending we don't delete.
Yeah, I will leave you with that. I am recommending you don't delete what might be a public record. And, yeah, so I'll leave you with that.
But if I could circle back to the emoji, like the thumbs up or
Right.
other things that you do on social media, if there's the potential that you all as a committee are reaching a collective concurrence in a social media setting,
Correct.
that could be a violation of the Brown Act, even with the
Exactly.
use of emojis and other popular social media.
Thumbs up, all of
Yeah.
a sudden,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or thumbs down for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if I could just share as a resource, so, while you're serving on the committee, if you would like to have a district email, you can. Sometimes what committee members will do is they'll create an email that they use serving on the committee that isn't the personal email that they created many, many years ago. And so there are different strategies available to you for your committee member correspondence, because we will be sending you emails with the agenda and different things just from staff. And so I just offer that to committee as some different options. And if any of you are interested in having a district email, while you're serving on the committee, happy to share the form. We can provide you with that.
And sometimes that's useful because you'll get a PRA request, as you know, for the committee members' email addresses. So if you're not all comfortable sharing your personal addresses, the district assigned email address is a good option.
Didn't we get one assigned to us? Didn't we get this email that all of us were assigned an email from the district couple from,
For this committee,
yeah.
I don't recall that.
I'll look it up.
I'm not saying no, but
Yeah.
Will it
So
just be
we
a
did
basic
This was
email
before,
or
the OG members have.
a VPN or anything, or just regular email?
So what it will have available to you, as a district email is it'll create accessibility to some of the Google Suite, because we are a Google district. And so I just,
So staff will get back to you on that if you, or let Melissa know if you need.
yeah,
or
it's an
want a district
application.
email.
So you would
Yeah.
have to complete the application, and then IT would provide you with that email.
I would be interested.
So,
Okay, absolutely. I'm happy to share that. I'll share it with all the committee members, and then if you guys are interested, you'll just submit the application. And we'll get that for you.
so we'll end this part. We will talk about parliamentary procedure later. Once we figure out what parliamentary authority you want to use and all of that, we'll have that put on the next agenda. Let's go to our next item, which is a presentation of the overview of the 7-Eleven committee. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Nope, you go. Finish.
Will you flip a coin?
I'll take this. Good evening, everyone. Again, thank you for having me tonight. I'm going to present on the role and responsibilities of the committee. I know some of you received a presentation on role and responsibilities earlier in the process. So for the members who've been on the committee for a while, this will be a refresher, and for the new members, hopefully you've had an opportunity to review the slides that were provided in advance, and please interrupt me and ask any questions. That of course goes to everybody.
just for your information, I provided not only the slide presentation from the October meeting, but also a link for the video / audio and a transcript. So I thought it was actually an outstanding presentation.
Okay, great. It wasn't me.
I know, but
It was a.
if you're firm, so it's like,
Yes,
There might be something on it.
yeah. Yes.
Oh, I'm gonna ask that if this was the same firm that came in the last round? Okay,
yes.
Yes, and so, the last presenter, was Nancy Taylor. And so, same firm.
Okay, great. And I'm really glad that I'm going after the Brown Act presentation, because if we go to the first slide, I did want to point out, and for those of you who are familiar with the Education Code statutes that govern the 7-Eleven committee, Education Code 17387 does say, and it is the legislative intent of these statutes, that this be a very the community have an involvement in this process, and that the community be able to provide input as you're moving through the process, which is why this is a board-appointed committee, and subject to the Brown Act, your meetings are open to the public, as we've been talking about through Tammy's presentation. And not only is it a Brown Act committee meeting that's open to the public is encouraged and should be participating as you're moving through this process, and I'll be touching on that as we go through these slides. So again, just an overview of the 7-Eleven committee. It is a board-appointed committee comprised of between 7 and 11 members. I love saying that because I know to some of you it might be obvious, but that's the reason it's called a 7-Eleven committee, is because it can be made up of a minimum of 7 and up to 11 members. The duties of the members are outlined in Education Code 17390 specifically. There are 5 duties or overarching obligations that we'll walk through in some detail. And with the primary goal of the committee, one of the primary goals is that with the hope that you'd be able to present, not only vote on, approve, and then present a recommendation report to the board regarding the use or disposition of the properties that are under your purview. Next slide, please. Just generally for the formation of a 7-Eleven committee, we wanted to outline what the steps would be for that, which of course occurred here. The board takes action to authorize the formation of the 7-Eleven committee.
Usually, of course, that occurs through a resolution or just a general board action. District prepares and posts application forms for the public to apply for the committee. So members of the public are encouraged to apply to be members of the committee. District staff receives and reviews those applications, makes recommendations to the board, and from there, the board appoints the members. This most recent group, I believe, was appointed in January of this year with the 3 new members coming on board. And of course, under Education Code Section 17389, the Asset Management Committee, or 711 Committee, as we've been calling it, should have representative members of the following categories. So there has to be at least one representative of these groups on the committee. So of course, you see there ethnic, age group, and socioeconomic composition of the district, business community, landowners, teachers, administrators, and a couple more that are identified there. And of course, you all meet the requirements of the statute and represent these required groups. Next slide. So this is what I was touching on a few slides back. This is Education Code Section 17390 that outlines what the 711 committee's duties are. As a member of this committee, you will review projected school enrollment and other data as provided by the district to determine the amount of surplus space and real property. So I'm gonna read to you how the statute lays it out, and then of course I'll explain how the process works practically. So of course, through this process, you've received quite a bit of information from the district. The information that I think you'll continue to receive includes the enrollment data, projected enrollment data, and past data for overall district enrollment. And the importance of that data is, of course, as a committee that's looking at to make recommendations on district-owned property and providing the board with options for what should occur with those properties, it's important for you to know if the district would ever need those school sites as school to actually house students again. So in order to make that part of what you consider, you would need an understanding of what the overall enrollment projections are for the district. So yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you mid-sentence, but you just used a phrase that I want a clarification on there. Would ever need the site again
Yes.
from now until Armageddon?
No,
Or-
but of course, what you're hoping to do as part of this process is make recommendations that the board can take and apply here in the next few years, right? So with the data you have currently, and with the projections for long-term enrollment, which we're seeing across the state for the most part are declining. And yes, you're nodding your head.
No, I'm just in agreement. I needed to hear from somebody that's actually passed the bar. I watched all of Perry Mason, but I don't have the certificate on the wall like you guys do. I knew we weren't really talking about forever and ever until the end of time,
Right.
but I don't want somebody else coming back and saying, well, she said this.
Well,
I
thank you for the clarification. Yes.
I was gonna say, I think based on the decision that everybody votes on whether they're gonna build houses or whatever, if they're gonna build schools or keep it as a school opposed to tearing it down and stuff.
Yes, so the importance of the enrollment data is because, of course, if you're looking at what should happen to a school property or school district owned site next, right? It's important to determine, will that school be needed for students to be housed? So based on the information we have now and the data that the district staff present, that's an important component of this process and the analysis that goes into being able to make those recommendations. And you'll see in the next slide, there's of course additional data, some of which you have received, which is valuation data relating to the sites that are under your purview. Sometimes budgetary information is presented, title information relating to the site. So you can make an informed recommendation to the board about what should happen next with those properties. Are there any questions about that first bullet? Any more questions?
So just some clarification for the new people on here, of the 4 sites that we are really discussing, 3 of them, the buildings have already been torn down.
Mhm.
The only one that is left is Adams Middle School,
I saw, 2 buildings today,
where,
Adams and Portola. No, sorry, Portola was closed. I There was one where, yeah, there are portables right next to it.
Well, that's, yeah,
So I
but
don't know
that's
if
not,
that's the
this
same thing or
this is not the same site.
It's
Is
not
that the one across
included.
from the like electricity
Yeah,
building?
there's a different site.
Okay.
Well, and one of the things I just want to share for the committee, is there is a lot of information that was presented in the previous meetings, but we're gonna bring all of that information back to this committee so that everybody has the same information. And so, today's meeting, we really wanted to make sure we understood kind of the parameters of parliamentarian procedures and debate and Brown Act, and then really help you understand and share with you kind of an overview of this process and kind of the committee's role. Again, providing a lot of statute, if there's anything that you wanted to check. At our future meetings, we'll be bringing all of that data back to this full committee. And so we'll be bringing all of that to you again.
Move the procedure along.
Yes, we're on the second bullet of the statute. No, I'll move it along. But because the way it's drafted, sometimes, I mean, we definitely get questions about how is this supposed to work? So hopefully we can shed some light on that. Establish a priority list of use of surplus space and real property that will be acceptable to the community. So what that entails is, of course, you as a committee with the data that's being presented are developing findings and recommendations that would be incorporated into a report. Once you all come to a consensus about what those findings and recommendations are, there is an opportunity, and actually it's a requirement under the statute, how the district does it procedurally is something that we provide guidance on and we have recommendations for. But ideally, the district would then hold a public hearing, right? So as part of the 7-Eleven process and committee process, a public hearing would be agendized, where the public can provide input on the findings and recommendations that have been presented in the draft report that the committee has reached a consensus on. And it's really important that the community participate in that public hearing process and provide their input so it can inform anything more that you all have to develop as part of the findings and recommendations, and then be able to make and take a final vote of what your findings and recommendations are that you're approving for the recommendation report, and that'll go to the board for consideration. So I skipped through the rest of the steps, but that's generally what it entails, is that you are making recommendations and putting them in the order that you'd like the board to consider them. You're seeking input from the community on those recommendations. And of course, the community has an opportunity at every single one of your meetings, but then there would be a special time in a public hearing where they could provide their input, and then you all develop the report from there, develop it further, to reach a final agreement on the what the recommendation report should contain, and that report goes to the board for consideration. So are there any questions around that? I just wanted to really outline that process in a way that makes sense, and receive questions on that if you have them.
No, it does make sense. And I just wanted to ask, we know that we had, previous members that were here previously for quite some time, and a lot of work's already been done. And I was just curious, what's the expected, duration of this, committee?
From what I understand, we're looking at probably about 5 meetings. Let's go with 5 meetings. And I don't know if that 5 meetings is going to include public hearing, or if we're gonna need a 6th for the public hearing. So, about 5,
1 a month.
or a week, depending on how we look at it. From what I understand from staff, this is a
So by
quicker
comment,
process.
yeah, we were hoping to try to squeeze in 2 meetings a month if we could. There's some months that we may not get 2, but we'd like to get 2 a month so we can move the process forward.
I was curious with the summer months coming in, vacation time, and
Yeah, so I mean, if we could wrap this up before the end of the school year, that would be our
Awesome.
goal.
And we're gonna adopt a calendar for the meetings later on today.
Cool.
Okay, and we touched on a little bit of this already, but this is just an example of the type of information that typically gets presented to 7-Eleven committees. I know some of this you have received, and as Melissa said, you will continue to receive, and the information that was previously presented will be hopefully updated and presented again. I did want to touch on one thing. The reason why, in some cases, the budgetary considerations are, maybe ranked higher for some districts in terms of what should be presented to 7-Eleven committees is because there is this AB 820 that is, something that districts are considering, taking advantage of. It's for, the use of proceeds. So typically when, property is sold after it's deemed surplus, and we'll walk through those steps, it gets, and I'm gonna simplify this, deposited into what's called a facilities fund. It's more restricted, and there is the opportunity now for transactions that are initiated before June 30th, 2024, for the district to seek a one-time transfer of those funds from the more restricted fund to the general fund. And districts are hoping to take advantage of that. So when budgetary considerations relating to why that's important to a district to be able to take advantage of that process is a top or important consideration for that district. That information typically is brought to the committees as a consideration for the committees as well as they're making a recommendation. So I did want to just make that point and highlight that.
Does the district currently have any restricted funds that are trying to move quickly? I mean, is there anything that we're discussing that would apply to the situation?
I would say at this point, no, but it is at the board's discretion.
Okay.
So with that, mean that you're really looking to have those wrapped up by,
No, the question was, are we looking to move these funds into outside of the restricted budget? Is that your
Well,
question?
no, my question
would
was,
have to be done by
is there
June.
anything the district is considering that applies to this? Like, is there something, do we have funds stored away somewhere from previous sales or something? I don't know. And we need to rush with that and make recommendations, or is this just like general information that probably doesn't apply because we haven't sold anything as surplus?
Well, in terms of, funds that were from prior sales, this committee's recommendation would not be required in order to do the one-time transfer.
Right. But it would be, our recommendation would be needed to the board to have the sale, right? We would make a recommendation for a sale of a surplus.
You would
Right.
make a recommendation that property should be deemed surplus, and then the board would take
Would-
action and deem it surplus, and then
Right.
those next steps occur, yes.
But my question, I guess what I'm trying to say is, does this apply at all to us right now?
It would really be up to the board. Have we had discussions about that? No.
Okay, so we don't have any surplus funds from previously sold surplus lands that are sitting in some budget somewhere that the district's like, oh, we can't use, we need to hurry up, like, that's not an issue that the district has, and that's not something we would be discussing now. It's if we wanted to hurry up and recommend sales for surplus land, if we wanted to, right? But that's not where we are.
You're asking a question that I don't know that I have the exact answer for you.
I'm sorry, I'm.
Can I make based on earlier meetings when we couldn't get a quorum, but we nevertheless made observation. Among the things that we were looking at or considering was property transfers where income property would be acquired by the funds that were generated by the sale of the property.
Mhm.
And then that income fund would be a steady source of income for the district, so that if we go for one-time money, given my experience in the district, it evaporates pretty quickly. And then we haven't adjusted our budget for long-term sustainability. So, but those things will come up in discussions as we go along.
Yeah.
You know, because there are covenants and conditions and restrictions on the properties themselves, which you'll discover as we go into the discussion. So we're kind of limited in some respects as to what we can do with some of the sites.
Right, but I'm saying, this AB 820 does not apply to us. Because there's a June 20th deadline and there's nothing on our plate that requires any urgency or any
Are
action.
you asking if there's an intent to try to sell one of these properties as one-time money to put into the general fund? I don't think that's been the motivation to have the 7-Eleven committee.
Right.
That's what AB 820 was.
Well, actually, I wasn't suggesting that, but that's Yeah, yeah.
That,
More
that
than-
would
yeah.
flow from
Okay.
A20. A20 allows you to do that, to sell property and move money to the general fund. And
Right.
That would be. the
Right,
That's what
only
I
way.
was.
If there was a rush to get it done by June, it would be if somebody wanted to rush it to get it done, that would be the goal, but I don't think that's the motivation.
Don't, yeah, I wasn't under the impression, but I could see how that, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. My only question was, does this apply to us? And it doesn't seem like it does not. The ABA 20, it was interesting, but it does not apply to anything we're doing right now. So sorry to make it so complicated. I just wanted to understand that better.
Well, and I think it's a wonderful question, and one of the things we want to share with the committee is, you know, part of our role as staff is to really support this committee. And so as you have these incredible questions, and as a committee, when you need additional technical resources, we can bring those to the committee so that you can get additional information. And so definitely keep those questions coming, and we'll bring the experts here so that we can get that information so that you guys can make the best decision as a committee. Our intent tonight was to kind of just provide a higher level summary, but we will support the committee and any of the resources that you guys need along the way.
And speaking of higher level summaries, so we have included here, of course, what occurs after the committee's recommendations are made. And there's a lot of detail that goes into the processes that the district's board can engage in and what they can consider as options. We hope to come back and be able to provide additional information around those, but I wanted to just touch on and walk you through generally how we've outlined this. And then again, I hope to be able to come back with a little more time in order to delve into the details of each of these. So if we go to the next slide, of course, the committee can make a recommendation that the board deem property surplus. So if that occurs and the board does deem the property surplus, take action to deem the property surplus, then there are certain steps that will occur after that. And I can say it's a 3-step process. So first, the board deems the property surplus. Second, there's a public offering process that the district would engage in, which means that the properties would be offered to public agencies that are outlined in the Education Code and Government Code as in almost a right of first refusal fashion. So they have an opportunity to consider and purchase the properties first. Assuming the district and the public agency can reach an agreement on the purchase price. And of course, you see there that there's a reference to the Naylor Act. So where there's recreational property, that's included as part of what's being considered and what recommendations have been received on. The recreational agencies also get a right of first refusal and can potentially acquire for less than fair market value. So those are all considerations in this process, yes.
Just a question on the Naylor Act. I asked this back in October when it was presented, but I can't recall the answer. Since most of these are school sites, there's a playground.
Yes.
So does that mean that this is recreational?
So there are certain criteria that have to be considered to make that determination. And I think that you probably heard at that time that one of them is, has it been used as for recreational purposes within the last 8 years, right? So there are certain things that would have to be considered, and that would have to be analyzed on a site-by-site basis.
So if some of these schools have been closed longer than that and demolished, but others have been within that 8-year span. So if there was a playground or a ball field being used.
Then yes, the likelihood of it having to be offered to recreational agencies is high. But again, we'd have to do that assessment side by side.
Okay.
But I will go to another option at the tail end of the surplus section. So if you give me another minute to get through the next slide. And again, this is a very involved process, but there is a step 3 to surplusing, which is a formal bidding procedure. So if the district does not sell to a public agency, then the property is, the district's board can receive bids during what's called this formal bidding process, which is again, step 3 of disposing of surplus property for sale or long-term lease. And there's some detail here. Again, I hope to be able to come back with a lot more detail, but I wanted to just bring it to you as the step 3 of the process. And then hopefully be able to transition to the next slide, which covers the waiver process. So a lot of what we're seeing now is that districts are seeking waivers from the State Board of Education for certain portions of the surplus statute. So of course, we said that there are generally three steps. The board deems the property surplus, there's the public offering procedure, and then the formal bidding procedure. A district can seek waivers of the public offering and public bidding or formal bidding, or just the formal bidding. So it really depends on what the district's trying to accomplish. For Naylor Act properties or properties that were used for recreational purposes, school districts are more and more seeking waivers from the State Board of Education to avoid having to offer those to recreational agencies at less than fair market value, because of course, these days, a lot of districts need the income and the potential long-term revenue if long-term leasing is something that's being considered. And the State Board of Education is granting those waivers. So that's why I wanted to say, like, to your Naylor Act question, it's a really important question and consideration, but there are options for maybe working through the process in a way that benefits the district, that doesn't restrict us to a less than fair market value sale or long-term lease process.
Would a
Yes.
city be eligible to buy a property? There's only one in Richmond, and I'm just curious if,
Yes, if the district were to do the public offerings, cities are an agency that receives the right of first refusal, yes.
So does the location have to be in the city that is making the bid, or can another city?
Typically, and again, this is all by statute, it's the cities within the school district boundaries, the counties within the school district boundaries, but again, it's all specified by statute. Yes.
At which point would the definition of recreational use be decided on? Would it be decided prior to our recommendations? Would it be decided when the board has a recommendation and someone challenges it as a Naylor Act? Where in the process does it happen?
I think it's important for you as a committee to be able to assess that. So hopefully through this process, that's something that can be better defined if these properties, the question of if these properties would be subject to the Naylor Act. But again, that's also revisited if a board makes, of course, because we said that the board has to act to deem a property surplus, which is what triggers these three steps that we've been talking about. So at that point, it would be assessed again.
What clarification, Louis, how long has Porter been closed? Has it been 8 years?
We may be
Oh, my
right
goodness.
there, because I think it. might
Okay,
be
so that we don't actually have any of the 4 sites
But
that were still,
we will confirm that and bring that back to the committee.
I don't believe
think
any of the 4
that's
sites have
great.
been used for recreational purposes within 8 years.
Harmon Mills has a joint recreational.
it's got a.
There's a site, Harmon Knolls has recreational equipment and grounds that, what shall I say? That extend into the parcel controlled by the district.
That's not true.
But this is,
On my visit,
Ah.
what's what it looks like.
this is not something, this would need to be a further agenda item at our next meeting, discussing specific sites and all of that. So we need to hold those thoughts
Right.
until next time, and we'll continue now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just had that, one question about, the zoning. Who would take in the consideration of zoning?
I believe some of that information was presented and it's being updated.
We'll bring that information on a site-by-site basis to the committee.
So just wanted to touch on, and again, these are pretty involved statutes that we're gonna be jumping into next, but I wanted to just touch on them, and then these we will bring back in more detail, but I'm gonna go through these slides pretty quickly. There are options that are outside of the surplus process for boards to consider when deciding what to do next with a property or how a property should be disposed of or used. And we call these alternatives to the surplus property process. I've identified here what those statutes are.
Should we take a
Excuse me,
break?
do we need a break? Do you need a break?
No, we actually, we can listen to what she's saying. If we're disturbing it to the people, we apologize.
Okay.
We were trying to
Appreciate that. Thank
we were trying
you.
to clarify something that was critically important to our discussions.
Then we can take that, hopefully you guys can take that at a later time so that we can
I apologize.
continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Generally, these would fall into the short-term and long-term leasing options that boards can consider for property, which of course are important for you developing recommendations. And again, like I said, we'll bring back more detail about each of these statutes and what they allow for. And if we could go to the next slide. Similarly, for employee housing projects or we would deem these, provide more information about the process for example, employee housing projects and how to develop those. And then just to point out that school district properties that are considered non-school facilities were not developed or have not been used as K-12 facilities for educational purposes are outside of the surplus property process, and just wanted to identify that as a separate exception to the surplus statutes. And then we touched on this a little bit, which is the use of sale or lease proceeds by district. And again, Melissa, if you can just, so this outlines, of course, what can occur with lease proceeds and sale proceeds, some of what we touched on a few minutes ago. And then the last slide covers what we were talking about, which was SB 820 and the one-time transfer opportunity. So again, we will come back with a lot more detail on these last few slides, but wanted to introduce them here, touch on them. And of course, if you all have more questions on what we presented, then please, I'll turn it back to the chair to receive those questions. And Tammy?
Are there any questions at the moment? And I'm sure you'll work with the chair that's about to be elected and staff on a time for them to come back so we can address this question.
Will you be attending every meeting?
No, so the current plan is that the next expert that would be joining the committee would be providing the information about the properties. And then I try to keep notes of all the different things that the committee is asking for. And so when there are areas that you would like to have additional information about the process, then we'll let them know what those areas are so that they can come back and bring that information to the committee.
Same property people from before too?
Yes,
Okay.
Terra Realty,
Okay.
Scott Shelton.
Great. If there are no more questions, we will move on to our next item, the election. And thank you very much for answering all of those questions in your presentation. The election of 7-Eleven committee members. Our first will be the election and vote for chairperson. Are there any nominations or self-nominations for the chairperson?
You say self-nominations?
You can self-nominate. So I'm gonna, oh, you're going first?
I self-nominate for chairperson.
Okay, Samantha? So you're gonna
Self-nominate myself.
self-nominate. Any other nominations or self-nominations?
I earlier indicated an interest, I don't know that if you have 3 people out of 7. So
Okay.
it's gonna be an interesting process.
So you're self-nominating. Well,
I'll still throw my hat in the ring.
okay,
But
And then we'll
have to
vote.
have
We'll
some
vote.
sort of
Yeah, I
runoff.
was gonna self-nominate for vice chair.
we do we're doing one at a time and then we'll go there. Okay. Any other nominations or self-nominations for the chair position? Okay, so we talked earlier about balloting. This is going to be up to you if you want to use a ballot or if we just want to take roll call and vote.
I'm good with that.
Is everyone okay with roll call? Okay, we're gonna call roll in no particular order. Please just let me know the name of the person that you are voting for. Don,
Oh,
James,
myself.
Summer,
I'll vote for Jen. James.
James. Okay, Samantha,
Myself.
Liz,
I don't know anyone yet. I don't know what their opinions are. Do I have to do a vote right now? Yeah,
no one can proceed to vote.
okay, I'll abstain.
And
I'm
abstaining is, okay. Archie,
John,
what do we think?
Don.
On
It's the time.
6? 3 out of 6. I actually cannot break a tie. I'm not a voting member.
I just wanted it to be not tiebreaker.
So Don got 3 votes out of 6, which is not a majority. So we will try this again. And as we do this again, is there anyone else that wishes to self-nominate? Okay,
Would you like us to explain what we stand for, what we believe, or what the direction we're
with
going?
the committee after that? Yes, so why don't we go in the order, and Samantha, if there's no objections, we'll put a 1-minute time limit. Is that enough? Okay,
do we want to take a break before we do that, or?
this is a great opportunity for motion, do you?
Would like to make a motion for a 5-minute break?
Okay, there's no objections, we will take a break for 5 minutes, and we will come back at 7:46. See you at 7:46.
Yeah, restrooms are located down the hall. They'll take a right turn and they'll be right behind you. If you'd like some water.
Are far away.
Oh, yes, in the middle.
I'll be right there.
I call the meeting back to order. It is 7:46, and we will start with the candidates. And we'll start with you, Samantha, and we will, do we have a timer up or do you want me to time?
Still
If
recording.
you would time, that would be great.
I have time, so whenever you start talking, I'll hit the timer.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Samantha Torres. I am asking to be chair of this committee for several reasons. I was a committee member in the last process, in the last attempt of this. I did not miss any meetings despite having had a baby during the pandemic and having worked full time. So I made the effort. This is really important to me. I made the effort to be here at every single meeting last time. I pushed really hard to get meetings going back again, and for the process to be improved so that it could be easier for parents and people who are committed to this cause to be involved. I am a mother of a child in the district, an 11-year-old, and I also have a 3-year-old who will soon be coming in through the district. So I am actually really invested in how the district's going to use these facilities because my own children will be impacted by the decisions made in this committee. I'm sorry?
10 seconds.
Oh, so I'm asking for your vote as a mother and also a district employee. I'm asking for your vote as chair because of my commitment. I think I've demonstrated in the last year. Thank you.
Thank you. I did not ask this to begin with, but let me ask now, do we want to add a minute for questions?
Sure.
If there are no objections, we'll allow 1 more minute for questions. Having said that, are there any questions of this candidate? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move to our next candidate, Dawn. And as soon as you start talking, I'll start.
As Sam pointed out, but all 3 of us candidates, we've attended all the meetings. We've been here from the very beginning. I have been here from the beginning. This is in 66 years with the district, one way or the other. As she pointed out, probably we are the OGs here. But I think that it's critical that we establish and maintain a free flow of communication between not just each other, but with the public as well. And that we allow people to be able to speak, be able to exchange information, provide opinions. Everybody should have a voice at the table. We need to make sure we have that outreach to the community. A couple of days ago, I gave a presentation to the East Richmond Neighborhood Council about what was happening. Of course, they cared about owning the school on their site. We need to make sure we have site visits. So it's easy to look at pictures, but until you see the sites, it's not quite the same. We need to listen to what everybody has to say and make sure that when we make a presentation to the board and the public, that everybody's opinions are included. But we also need to establish the committee's independence. Make sure that they understand that this is coming from the community and not coming just from the staff.
Great question.
Questions, 1 moment, let me read that. 1 minute for questions. Go ahead.
With you being in the district for 66 years, do you have input or have you taken a look at other districts' opinions as far as like what this Contra Costa district should, I don't know, I guess, have what they've done with properties versus what we're trying to do with properties here?
I haven't been around several other districts. Don't ask me to ask which ones, because I didn't live there, so I didn't pay that much attention. And I've also been involved with the disposition of our surplus properties before. The last one I recall was gotta be about 30 years ago at Old Patel Elementary School, which is now housing.
Any other questions for this candidate?
I have a question.
Okay.
Do you have any children or grandchildren currently in the district?
No, I don't have any children at all,
Any
in or out of the district.
other questions?
I'm sorry, I am a taxpayer though. And a
Great.
voter.
We'll move on to our next candidate, James. Time will start when you start talking.
I just want to make a few points. My last position when I was a peace officer was the director of crime prevention for the city of Berkeley. And I organized community meetings to build safer neighborhoods and conducted those meetings to make sure that everybody that came to the meetings felt that they used their time well and that they were heard. And I would bring those same skills to this committee to make sure that everybody was heard. Beyond that, as an appraiser, as an assessor, I'm used to, I've been involved in appraising land, appraising properties, both movable and not. And I could use that knowledge in the committee. And finally, as a teacher, and seconds, as a teacher, I understand how schools work. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions for this candidate? Seeing and hearing none, that is all of the candidates, and we will go back to voting. And we'll go by roll call again. Guadalupe.
That's hard.
Can you go back to that?
Absolutely. Archie.
Don.
Liz?
It's a hard decision. I'm going to go with James,
Samantha?
but it could have been.
Myself.
Summer?
James. Another Samantha. Samantha.
Go back to your vote. Guadalupe votes for Samantha. We left with Summer. James
Myself.
and Don.
Arto? You said,
Archer voted.
you said, no, sorry, but you said Anton.
No, Don.
Okay, oh, myself.
So that is 3 votes for James, 2 for Dawn, and 2 for Samantha. No one has reached a majority. Are there any new self-nominations? I can add here, does anyone wish to no longer be nominated?
I'm losing support. And I don't see a way for us to break this, so I will switch my vote to Jen.
Well, we already completed a vote, so we gotta.
What you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, the question was, does anyone wish to no longer be nominated? But we'll go to another vote, starting from the top this time, Dawn
I'll go with Jim.
and Jane,
Myself.
Summer,
James.
Samantha,
Myself.
Liz, Archie,
I'll go with Samantha.
I'm sorry,
Samantha.
Samantha. And Guadalupe.
Samantha.
That is 3 votes for Samantha and 4 votes for James. We have a majority. Congratulations, James.
Thank you.
And we will move on to our next, I want to make sure I get the vice chair position. Are there any nominations or self-nominations for vice chair?
Could I also ask for clarification on roles? Because I basically knew what the chairperson's role were. I don't know what the vice chair or the secretary's roles are.
We will have to turn to staff for that.
Take a stab.
So I would say, the vice chairperson, would support in the chairperson's absence. The secretary would be taking the meeting minutes for the committee. And typically, we've seen that the, chairperson, vice chair, and secretary are essentially what you could call like an executive committee, an executive group of the committee that would prepare agenda, different things like that.
Okay, so, we take minutes?
Yes, the secretary would
Mhm.
take the meeting minutes
I see.
and then those would come back to the committee. They'd be on the agenda, for review and approval by the committee.
Okay, no, just because last time we didn't have a secretary, so I had staff taking minutes. That's why I'm asking
Yes.
first. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Point of order, I was just curious, would the secretary take minutes on their own personal devices?
So we can provide equipment for use at the meeting. The other thing that I would mention is just to the support of the committee is the parliamentarian. So she is also here to assist with those things, and can provide guidance, to the committee.
We've worked with other committees, including CBOC, when it comes to taking minutes and helping you make sure that we're getting. Too many times we see minutes that look like a court transcript. We don't need that. We'll help you include what's required under the Brown Act and leave the rest out.
And the meetings are all recorded anyway.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
They're all recorded.
And they'll be posted to Zoom, and we just want to add, our role as staff is really to support you. And so if there was a desire to have staff support with the minutes, we would be happy to do that. But we're here to provide that administrative support to the committee, for what you guys decide. And we'll assist with the postings and those other types of things, but we'll work really closely with the leadership of the committee to make sure that we have the agenda and things properly posted, et cetera.
So let's go back to vice chair and then we'll get to secretary. Are there any nominations or self-nominations for vice chair position?
I'll nominate Art over too.
Arto, you have been nominated. Do you accept the nomination?
Sure.
Great. Are there any other nominations or self-nominations?
I will nominate Dawn.
Okay,
No,
Don, do you
Yeah,
accept?
I'll go ahead
No?
and second that.
no, the vote for it said that they don't want me helping out, so I won't. Thank you though.
Any other nominations or self-nominations for vice chair? Seeing and hearing none by acclamation, congratulations, Artu. You are the new vice chair.
Correct. Wow.
So we will move to the secretary position. Are there any nominations or self-nominations for the secretary position?
I nominate myself for secretary.
Great. Are there any other nominations or self-nominations for the position of secretary?
I'd like the second her nomination.
We didn't need it. Self-nomination, we don't have seconds.
I'll nominate her, or vote for her too. I didn't realize we were done with our two.
Yeah, we're done with Artu because there was no, we didn't need to vote. Artu.
Sorry.
Kidding.
I'm sorry.
All right, so any other nominations or self-nominations for secretary? Seeing and hearing none by acclamation as the only one running, congratulations, Samantha, as the new secretary. And that completes our elections. Mr. Chair, would you like me to continue with the last item, which would be the meeting dates?
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay, so I hope you all brought your calendars. If you did, please bring them out. As was mentioned earlier, the staff was looking at maybe every other week. Does the time of 6 to 8 on Tuesday work for people? Let's get that out of the way first.
Not always.
Not always, okay.
Is there a Tuesday?
Not the first, second, and third.
Yes.
Not-
Cal versus Stanford, big meet on,
Can you give me a date, Don, for that?
trying to here.
Okay,
Sorry.
and then we had another, while you look up that, we had another,
Speak.
oh, sorry, I thought you were looking it up.
No, I'm looking, April 30th.
April 30th, so we'll exclude April 30th, we'll find a new date for that. Was someone else speaking that they had one? Lupe?
I can't, you said Tuesday the first, too?
What, are you not available?
I can't do first or second Tuesday in general.
So no first or second Tuesday. Okay, so let's do that. That would mean
Third Tuesday's good, huh? You could do third.
is the third Tuesday, which would be the 19th of March, open. Let me do this better. Does anyone have any objection to March 19th from 6 to 8 PM?
There is a district ASAT meeting scheduled on that date on the district-wide calendar event
Okay, let me go back
from 6 to 8.
from 6 to 8. Let me go back and let's look at every week.
A conflict for this? What about a
It
Thursday?
doesn't preclude, I'm just
Yeah,
sharing
no,
that
that
for
doesn't- What is the ASAT?
The African American.
Right.
So let's go by week. This is week of the 4th. Let's look at next week, the week of the 11th. Do you want to meet next week? We already know that Tuesday, the 12th would be bad. The 11th, the CBOC meets in this room. 13th, 14th, or 15th.
14th, I can't,
14th is out.
second Thursday of every month.
No Thursdays for me.
So we're just gonna toss Thursdays. That's great.
What about next Wednesday?
The 13th, is anyone available on the 13th? Yes, sir.
I just want to ask a question of Melissa. What is the conflict in a detailed way of the 19th? What,
I didn't mean to identify it as a conflict. It's just when there's a district-wide meeting and one of the things that we're encouraging for all district committees is participation and engagement. I feel responsible to identify if there is any other district-wide meeting happening at that same time. And so I'm bringing that information forward to the committee. We did have board members tonight that were observing the meeting. They were participating. If there are two district-wide meetings on the same night,
okay,
they may not be able to participate in both, but these meetings are also recorded. They are available on Zoom. So I want to make sure that you guys are always aware of this as you're making those decisions as a committee.
We last talked about March 13th. Is there anyone that has an issue with March 13th?
I guess I don't have an issue with March 13th. I think it sounded like we started out trying to find a cadence of meetings.
Yeah.
Right, same day.
Yeah.
Maybe we schedule 1 or 2 meetings out and
Yeah.
then try to put that on the agenda
Yeah.
to bring
Yeah.
back.
So let's get the next meeting and the one after that set, and then we'll hold until.
So if there's no conflict with the 19th, with the group
Yeah,
here,
correct.
can we do it?
yeah,
Absolutely. We now actually have,
I'd rather go back to the 19th.
okay, so do we want to give up the 13th altogether? We do not have to keep every other week. We could meet 2 weeks in a row and then not meet for a couple of weeks. This is up to you guys.
I would also like to propose that we offer a site tour to some of the new members before we get into kind of the heavier stuff of the meetings, because that's really gonna help all of us kind of be on the same page. And so I don't know if we want to time meetings to correspond with whatever plans y'all have for site visits.
I think it's something that can come up with the chair, now that we have a chair.
Okay.
So I think that for the agenda items, address that to the chair, and then the chair can figure out how they want to fit that into the agendas
Okay.
and.
Okay, we had the 13th and the 19th. Do we want to take both, or do we want to give one of those up? Because let's pick the next two, and then during those meetings, we can figure out with the new chair, the new board, what site visits and all of that kind of stuff.
Was someone opposed to the 26th?
We haven't gotten there yet.
Instead of the 19th? Instead of the 13th?
Let's do,
19th is good.
19th good. 19th is good.
so let's start with the 19th. We have set the 19th.
I mean, some of these weeks, some of us just don't want to be at 1 or 2 meetings every single night.
I understand.
And that's what we are doing for next week.
Okay,
That's my week.
so we have,
Some of us are supposed to be at the city council meeting right
I'm
now.
double dipping right now.
so is there any objection to March 19th? None. For the next one, March 26th was mentioned. Is there any objection to March 26th?
Yeah, I think it's a little soon. That's kind of cramped.
We would not be able to meet the first week of April, the district's closed,
Oh, okay.
so we'd have at
It
least,
could be the 9th.
I can't beat them.
you can't make the 26th?
No, she can't make the 9th.
April.
Okay, so we can't do
I'll
April.
withdraw the objection. If we can do, if we can do the 19th and the 26th, then And, Mr. Freeze, if there is a day, as I understand the Brown Act, no more than 2 of us can be together in the same place to discuss business. So if we were to take a tour Do we have an issue?
So you can actually agendize the meeting to be at the location.
Okay,
And the public would be allowed to.
And the public can come and visit too.
well, the only location that could host a meeting, and I don't even know if it has power anymore, would be the Adams site. All the others are flat ground.
I think one to consider on site visits is the, how soon it gets to dusk. So if the meetings are set at 6, if there was a meeting that would need to be moved earlier in the day, if you're gonna agendize the meeting, where people could actually see the site.
Well, the time does change this weekend, so.
Is it really?
Just keep it, I just want
That's
you
what
to
I
keep that in
said.
mind. So,
Was
the
not
sooner
on
we
my
make those
calendar.
meetings, the earlier they need to be.
Who hasn't decided? I need to go to one more site, but has everyone else already gone?
I grew up around here, I've seen them all.
I'm from the South Bay and I'm new to the community, but I purchased a property in Pinole, but I went to go visit each of the sites with the exception of one. So I got familiar with the area as well.
So for right now, let's make sure we're on the same page. We have the 19th and the 26th. We will meet from 6 PM to 8 PM here. In the meantime, the chair can work with staff to get a Skype visit scheduled. Are there any objections to the 19th and the 26th? And then future meetings will be on the agenda for the 19th.
Neither one of these dates are considered the site visit though, right? Because it's not necessary for me to visit the site.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, do you think it's necessary that we schedule this? Well, that was my opinion, but you can have the say here. Do you think it's important, required that we offer a site visit in terms of the cadence of meetings? I know, heavy is the
sorry.
head, right? I know.
No, I'm just inhaling.
Okay.
Speaking for myself, I would like to visit the Adams site. It's the only one that's truly worthwhile in terms of assessing what's there, actually what remains. Any of us can go up and visit the other 3 sites and see the ground and assess the view, such as it is, and the surrounding area and what the uses, land uses are of the surrounding areas. So, so if we were to choose, say the 26th, since the time would be changing, if we were to choose the 26th and meet at the Adams site, and then on our own visit the others, would that be acceptable? Would that work?
Are you just talking about a site visit on the 26th? Or are you talking about
A meeting on the 26th at Adams.
Is that possible?
Isn't it contaminated?
But we could do a site visit, we could put that on the agenda, and then we can relocate to another address for the actual meeting. Like,
Okay.
that would have power, and we can,
We could do that in close proximity, so we
Yeah.
can look through the
Right.
school, that'd be adjacent.
Right.
You know,
And staff
reconvene
can consider.
here after a site visit there.
Or we can go to a school site that's close. We could go to Mara Vista or pick another
Okay.
property, so we're not traveling so far between.
Yeah, Mira Vista would be good. It's very close.
we don't really need to go inside the Adams buildings, do we?
And I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, just around the
so-
ground.
Well, that makes it for a shorter visit.
It's a construction site
Well, we've been,
and there are liability issues.
we've been boarding up, but it's done now, but I wouldn't go in the buildings, but we can go around the property.
Okay, so.
so that'll be added to
Meeting on
the
the 26th
agenda on the 26th.
at the Mira Vista, you're first at Adams, tour around the grounds, and then reconvene at Mira Vista. in the-
We'll confirm that to make sure there's no conflicts with schedule, but we'll look for a close
Site
proximity.
visit for-
Sarah open or?
Yeah, so I'll check the schedule, see what's available.
And then we'll add to the 19th,
Meet here.
19th meet here and add onto the agenda there the rest of your future dates, to adopt.
There's a very good chance for the site visit that a lot of members from that community will want to join.
Yeah.
And we just had a neighborhood council meeting just the other day, which also included East Richmond, the unincorporated part. They all want to know what's going on with their school.
That's
Yes,
true.
a very, lot of passion behind Adams.
So if there are no objections, we will meet next, the 19th of March and the 26th of March, 6 to 8. With the site visit information and everything coming on the agenda for the 26th. Great, seeing and hearing none, the next two meetings are decided. That brings us to the end of our agenda, and we will adjourn at 8:11 PM. Thank you very much, everybody.
Louis, did you know Souza, Danny
Yeah, I
Souza?
did. I
Ronnie
did,
Cash,
I do.
Ronnie Cash,